to the How to Market Your Horse Business podcast. I'm so glad you're joining me here this week. Now, as you've likely guessed by now, I am Denise Alvarez, your host. And before we dive into the SEO strategies that I cannot wait to share with you, I'm going to do a very quick introduction in case we're new friends, and then I promise you we will dive in. Now, as I said, my name is Denise, and through my business, Storm Lily Marketing, I get to help dream-chasing horse business owners like yourself to see clearly through the marketing overwhelm so you can create a clear message and a cohesive plan for your social media, your website, and your email marketing, one that's going to turn your online audience into your customers. Now, I do that through one-on-one coaching, as well as website design, website copywriting, and education, such as this podcast, and I have some online learning resources available for you as well. My heart, friends, really is to help you to be out in the barn or the arena doing what you love as an equestrian entrepreneur. And so here on this podcast, you can expect a mix of step-by-step strategies, essential how-tos, and entrepreneurial mindset shifts that will help you not only see what's possible for your horse business, but I'm also here to guide you through that process so you can make it happen. Now today, as I said, we are diving into SEO, search engine optimization. And we're going to talk, if you're saying, what the heck, Denise, that's a little more advanced than you usually talk about, we're going to break that down. Because one of the most common questions that I get from website clients is, how will these changes impact how I'm found online? Will more people be able to find me online when we change the copy, when we refresh the website, or when I create a website? Which obviously, yes, that will make it easier. But here's the thing, the answer is not super simple as much as I would love it to be. Now, what I typically do is give my clients a brief overview of their question. What it really is asking is search engine optimization, which is essentially the process of optimizing your website to help your business to be found when someone is searching not just for your business name, which yes, they should be able to find you based on your business name, but what about when they search for the products and the services that you provide? For example, if someone searches for riding lessons near me, are you a facility that provides riding lessons? Then you want to do as much as possible on your website to help your website be at the top of those search results when they search online. Same for photographers or whatever product or service it is that you're providing. Now, here's the thing. I always let my clients know, and I've probably told you guys here before, that SEO is a full-time job for so many people, meaning there are agencies that are absolutely focused solely on helping people get their website found online. They don't design the website. They don't write the copy that's focused on converting those visitors into customers once they land on that website. Their sole focus is helping businesses to be found online. And the reason I tell you that is it's so important for you to understand that the strategies for SEO can be basic and then they can be deep and wide. And so that's not what I do. I'm not an expert. However, I do know enough to be dangerous. I can have the conversations and I know enough to help get my clients on the right footing. But as far as advanced strategies go, that is absolutely something that I have left up to the experts, because just as you guys know in your businesses, you cannot be an expert at everything. And so I focus on copywriting, design, and coaching. And so today's guest is an expert when it comes to SEO. So I am so pumped that she is here. I know clients that have worked with her. Some of my own website clients have worked with her to optimize their sites even deeper. And she's wonderful. And not only is she wonderful at what she does, but she also works in the world of horses. So she gets your equestrian business. Now, before we get into the interview, let me tell you this. If you're saying, Denise, I don't need an expert level conversation, I just need a basic overview, I do have a podcast episode for you. All right. So go back and listen to episode number 28, and you're going to hear me talk about SEO basics for the equine entrepreneur. All right. I'm going to link to that in the show notes for you. You can also just go straight to stormlily.com/28 or scroll on your podcast listening app to find episode number 28. either way, that's the starting place for you to understand SEO and the initial steps that you can take to get your website on the right footing before you go super advanced, like Krysta's going to take us a little bit deeper today. Now, I do also have a free resource that I would love for you to grab. It is an SEO basics checklist for your horse business website. Again, this is not super advanced strategies. These are the things, though, that when I get in and I'm redoing a website or doing one from scratch, of course I do this, but when I'm redoing websites, I am surprised how often I get in there and some of these basic things have not been taken care of. And they're so crucial for the way your website shows up online and search results, helping you to get found. And so I want you to go grab that checklist and you can check your own website and see where you stand with SEO. Okay. So if you go to stormlilymarketing.com/SEO basics, or of course, today's show notes, again, I'll have all of the things that we talk about on the show notes. So that's stormlily.com/148 for episode 148. Okay. I'll have all those things there for you. Because as I said, Krysta is going to share some really important information that I want you to consider for your SEO strategy. But just like anything else, if you don't have the basics, if you don't have that foundation in place, it's not going to serve you as well as it could. All right. So go listen to episode number 28. Go grab that free SEO basics checklist for horse businesses, and then pay attention to this episode because Krysta has brought some very practical and helpful SEO information. My goal here on the podcast is always to educate, to equip, and encourage you in your entrepreneurship journey. And I am 100% confident that this conversation with Krysta is going to do just that. Krysta is going to share with you 4 specific steps that you can take to really deepen your SEO strategy with your website. And she's also going to share her 4 pillars of SEO that she says should encompass a comprehensive SEO strategy. All right, friends, get your notebooks ready. And of course, go to the show notes because she's going to talk about a lot of things that you may want to write down or you just may want to go back and reference. So I will have, of course, the highlights of this conversation on the show notes. So that being said, let's dive in so you can meet Krysta. All right, Krysta, thank you so much for joining me here on the podcast. I am so grateful for your gift of time.
Yeah, I am so thrilled to be here and just grateful for the opportunity. So it's great to connect with you.
Yes, same. Now, I'm really excited because some of my listeners already know you. We were just talking about some mutual connections. And you have a variety of expertise, which we were talking about as well. So you have the Rural Podcast Network where you're the CEO, but you also do some SEO and digital marketing for Western brands. So before we dive into today's topic, which is SEO, which I'm, by the way, really excited that you're here because as I shared with you, I know the basics and I know how to get websites in a good place, but not a great. Like I'm not the expert. And so when people ask me like, am I going to be in the top? Like I will do all of the basic things, right? Get the images and, the descriptions and all of that. But I know there's another level. So I'm really excited that you're here to help those who are ready to go to that next level of their SEO strategy. But before we get there, tell us a little bit about your background and how you became an SEO and digital marketing expert for Western brands.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, where to start? I will try to keep this as short as I can. I'll give you the condensed version. And I feel like with all entrepreneurs, our lines or our journeys are not linear. But really, it starts with my passion for entrepreneurism. And I do always let people know, like, I was not a ranch girl. I was not a farm girl. I grew up in the city. And what actually stoked my passion for this lifestyle was I was a horse girl. And from a very young age, I could not get horses out of my head. And that followed me into young adulthood. And I did 4-H and FFA, and I kind of stuck with it. And eventually that path led me to volunteering to do all of the marketing for my local rodeo. Social media, PR, website management, you name it, I was doing it, and I was doing it for free. Now, a couple of things, and the reason why I mention this is it gave me experience that I didn't otherwise have. It also gave me an outlet, and I realized at that time that if I could do this for a nonprofit in an event, that I could probably do this for businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of that was really what propelled my start in entrepreneurism. After that, I launched my first business, which was Southwest Media Solutions. And I was offering social media marketing to brick and mortar businesses in my area. Um, and it was wildly successful. So much so that I was booked for probably about 3 to 4 years straight. But it led to me burning out. And social media, as we know, changes every single day. And it was a time where people, and I'm sure you've experienced this to some extent, is when people think, like, when they show up online, they're like, oh, I'm going to make millions of dollars. Like, I'm posting on social media,
Yes.
so I must make $1 million now.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got tired of combating that. So I kind of switched gears and I moved from social media to, I would say, more generalized marketing. At that point, I'd picked up like newsletter experience. I was working for a website person. So again, in this journey, as I was picking up and going through every open door that I could to get experience in different areas. At this point now, it's been 10 years since all of that, since that jump into entrepreneurism. And the way that I found myself into the Western and ag industry is I started working for Tara Vanderdusen about 2 years ago. And she is the host of Discover Ag, and she does a lot of advocacy. And at the time, she was posting blogs and whatnot. And I signed up as a marketing assistant for her, and it just ended up kind of like snowballing. And all of a sudden, I had several different clients in the Western industry. The SEO experience was one of those doors that I walked through in my 10 years of marketing experience. So I did a stint during COVID where I was remotely working for a marketing agency who only did SEO. That was the only thing they did. We worked with several clients based out of LA. So I worked with, I don't know if you're familiar with the grocery store brand Erewhon, but we did a lot of work for them, several high profile clients, and it was great experience, but my heart was not happy serving those
Yeah.
clients.
Mm-hmm.
But I did learn a lot. So I was able to take my experience away from that and be able to serve clients in this industry. So, like I said, that was a very condensed version, but that's the best that I can wrap it up without going on and on and on. So
I understand. I typically preface that question with, listen, I know this may sound like a loaded question. We can spend some time here because your story matters. And it also lays the groundwork for people to be able to understand why I invited you here on this podcast as the expert that you are, because you have those years of experience built in, and you have an understanding of the Western industry and the equine industry. And we both know that that means a lot when it comes to effective marketing. And so some people have worked with companies who were experts at marketing, but maybe didn't have an understanding of the equine industry. And it can be very, very different. And so I appreciate that because people can hear your heart and know what your expertise is. Now, tell me a little bit, even though we're talking SEO, I want people to also know that you're the CEO of the Rural Podcast Network. How did that come into the story?
Oh, gosh. So we had talked about before we hit record that podcasting has really blown up in the last couple of years. And so I had mentioned that Tara Vanderdusen, along with Natalie Kaborik, launched Discover Ag. It was a couple years ago now, and I was really at the very foundation of that. And along with them, I've had several other clients who I was doing marketing for, and then they decided to launch a podcast. I had podcast experience before. Again, it was one of those doors that I decided to jump through. It was 2018 or 2019 that I did my own podcast. So I had that production experience. And I'm like, at that point, I had like probably 3 or 4 podcasting clients. And I'm like, this needs a bigger umbrella than just myself. And I saw a hole in the industry where I could serve podcasters and give them resources and a community to lean on. That was under one umbrella. So the Rural Podcast Network was born actually last November. So I'm just coming up on a year in business for that. But it's been a blast. And for however long podcasting sticks around, I think it's going to be here for a while. I think audio marketing is going to be something that sticks around as long as websites have been. So, like I said, it's something that I do alongside other things. And usually people that have podcasts also have websites and need marketing and SEO. So they all kind of
Yeah.
tie together.
Yeah, so true. And truly an entrepreneur at heart when you see that need and you create a business to meet the need. I love that. Okay, so back to the SEO. For those that are listening, I'll already break it down a little bit in the intro what SEO is and just the basics of that because I've done a podcast episode on literally the basics of SEO. And so I want you to take us a little bit deeper because the reality is, I know that you've heard this, is people will come and say, hey, I want people to be able to find me online. And that's it. Like that's their understanding of SEO. And they don't really understand how that works, how they get in front of the right people. And that really is an important piece when you're talking about SEO, which I'm guessing you would agree, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So it's funny because as I mentioned, it's the same with social media, right? Or even, I mean, like you said, with the website in general, is that when people invest in something and they just have this idea in their head, and it's just because we all come from different walks of life, our understanding of things is very different. And as marketers, we see everything, like we see the effort that goes into all of those things. We know the steps that goes into building a website or launching a podcast, and it's not instant. And so that's the very first thing, especially where we are in the digital world right now, is that SEO is not like a one-time fix. So a lot of times too, people will come to me and be like, hey, Krysta, can you fix my website for SEO? And I'm like, yeah, I can. And same with you. Like you can set up a website to set somebody up for success. But ultimately, that success is going to be ongoing. Like it takes constant updates, constant blogs, constant keyword research. So I do want to kind of preface the conversation with that is that it is not a one-time fix. There is usually a one-time fix that happens, where we go through your website and update it for keywords and whatnot. But to truly be effective in this space and to truly get found online where you want to, it's going to take an ongoing effort. So I would say, like I said, as a way to start. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's so good. I could not have said it better. I was actually listening to a different podcast on entrepreneurship, and she was talking about her own journey. And when she really made blogging a priority, it took her from her tracking about 18 months to actually see the true return. And that was 18 months of regular blogging, not 18 months of like she wrote a blog post and left it. She regularly was blogging and adding to her website an 18-month period before she saw the fruit of it. So I thought that was it was a good reminder from you. And that was a good reminder when I heard that from her too. Is like this idea is not a quick fix. It is setting you up. I love how you said that. Okay. Yeah. So given that, so everybody has that understanding, Krysta is still going to give us some practical ways. So whether you're someone who's doing your own website, which I know we have many entrepreneurs who are, or if you're hiring somebody, these are things that you can do or you can ask others to do for you to get you set up for success and ideally build on that. So Krysta, you've got the floor. Give us some practical ways we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the very first place that I like to start, and again, this applies to whether it's me doing it for a client, you doing it for your own website, or you even communicating to somebody else of what you need help with, is starting for what you want to be found for. Because sometimes the idea of what we want to be found for isn't a reality on Google. So just to give you a little bit of context with that is, for instance, if you wanted to be known as the #1 photographer in the US, okay, great. I just looked up that keyword photographer on my keyword little research tool before, and there was like something like 600,000, there were that many links online. That's your competition is like 600,000.
Like
links.
the results.
Yeah.
Like the results are like, there are like 600,000 links that will show up in the results.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, so for instance, so now obviously we're not going to ever rank for that. It doesn't matter how much blogging we do, how much structure we put in your website. It's too broad. The other statistic I looked up before hopping on was there's over 1 billion websites. And I'm sure that number is closer to 2, like globally. So that's your competition. So you have to think about the keywords that you want to be known for that is going to help you stand out from that competition. What kind of content can you put on your website that's going to help people find you and automatically start building that trust that you are an expert in your field? So with that in mind is search. I always recommend just go to Google and start typing in the things you want to be known for, because it's going to do a couple of things for you. It's going to show you the top 10 results on Google. And if that is something that you have your heart set on and you really want to be found for that, whatever you typed in, is you're going to want to take notes of what those top 10 websites are doing. What kind of blogs are they publishing? How is their website structured? What kind of pages do they have? How many links do they have going? Like it's internal link building. How is everything linked together? So taking notes of what essentially your competitors are doing for that keyword that you want to be found for. The other thing this is going to do is it's going to help you realize how many people are using that keyword. Because again, this is different for everybody. And there are some, and just in full transparency, there are some keywords that I really tell my clients, hey, like we're going to have to do a lot of work to get you even close to the first page of Google. The competition for keywords is stronger than ever. And you're going to have to really dedicate your time and money and just energy into creating content for this keyword. So there's some keywords that I just tell my clients like, hey, this is a possibility, this is not a possibility, and this is usually what my recommendation is. So all that to say, sometimes what you think you want to rank for is not what you should be ranking for.
Okay, I have a couple questions and I'm going to pretend like I'm the person. Okay. Then I'm like, you see me over here, like grabbing a piece of paper. I'm like, okay, I've got some questions already on behalf of the listeners. Number one, when you're saying what you want to be known for, and you gave the example of photographer. Again, I know that this is not going to be like definitive, but I've talked before on the podcast about niching down and just in your messaging, how important that is. But how important is it when it comes to keywords for people to niche down? And even including because something often people don't think about is like their location. And that's not the case for everybody. Depends on, what it is they're doing. For those that are selling apparel and shipping it, nationwide or into Canada, that location may not matter. But how specific do they need to be? And do they need to include location?
Yeah. So it really does depend on like what kind of business you have. For example, I was just talking to a gentleman, and so I'm talking to him about maybe doing some SEO on his website, and he wants to be known as the Ohio equine photographer. In that case, and I did some keyword research for him initially to see if I can help him improve the SEO on his website, and B, kind of what the results of that would be. So I can generally get an idea of doing some initial keyword research right off the bat. In that case, if we update his SEO, like to the way, and we can kind of get more into this too, but if we update his website, the term Ohio equine photographer is very, very easy to rank for because there's only going to be a handful of them. There's probably only so many equine photographers in Ohio. So the chances of him getting to that front page is going to be pretty good. Now, I'm sure that's going to be different in a state like Texas, which is one of the largest states, huge horse community. The chances of getting ranked as the Texas equine photographer is going to be much, much harder. And again, just those factors of knowing that it's an industry state, just knowing that the state is much bigger, you're going to have many more photographers based out of Texas. So again, kind of taking into those situations also. Now, I have a tool, again, I've mentioned this a couple of times now. I have a keyword research tool that tells me how many times on average per month a keyword is searched for. Obviously, it's a paid tool, so there are free ones. Wordtracker.com is one. Wordstream.com is one. And those are free ones that you can do, I think, like up to 5 keywords per month. And it does give you an idea of what those search results are on average per month of how many people are searching for it. So with that, going back to kind of the niching down, is you want something that's kind of in the middle. You don't want something that's not searched at all, that is like so niche that nobody's looking for it. But you also don't want to put yourself in a position where you're going to get lost in the competition. So finding something that's really really right in the middle. And I know that's like hard to determine like what's going to be effective. And usually, and I could probably find some examples. It's tough, right? Just as a hypothetical, what those numbers would be. But there is a sweet spot of how far to niche down. Hopefully that answers the question enough.
Sure. Yep, I get it. And I know that some of those depends questions are really hard to answer because that's why people pay you to do it, because there are so many different factors. So I understand that completely. Okay. The other question, and you can tell me, Denise, pause, because we're going to talk about that in a little bit, because you mentioned blogging and I wanted to get your opinion on that in terms of a necessity. But if that's in your list of things that you're going to talk about, you can say, just pause. We'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely dive into it now, or we can touch on it later. I do think like if you are committing to SEO, I definitely think it's something you need to be doing. Especially again, if you're dead set on being known as something in your industry for a certain keyword, like Ohio equine photographer, then you need to be creating content that supports that keyword.
Okay, here's a super technical question when you say that, because, okay, for those we know there are many website platforms. There are different ways that, there are rankers, plugins, things like that. So I've noticed that, for example, if I'm creating a blog post and I pick a keyword, then I will get a notice that says, hey, you might want to pick something else. You've already used that keyword on a different page. Should we not do that? Should we do that? What is your opinion on that? Because you're saying if you want to focus on Ohio equine photographer, use that on different blog posts multiple times. We're competing with ourselves, or that's okay? Talk me through that on a practical sense.
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. So I think it really depends. Obviously, you don't want to create duplicate content. You also don't want to keyword stuff. So, for example, in that blog post, and again, like just right off the top of my head, I probably wouldn't use Ohio equine photographer in a title of a blog post. I would probably create supporting content around your services, around locations in Ohio that are great for shooting equine photography. So thinking about topics that support your primary keyword. So if we're going on this example of Ohio equine photographer, is that's going to be, and when I say primary keyword, that is going to be in like the very tippy top of your website structure. So the very first thing that people should see is Ohio equine photographer. And in technical terms, some of you may or may not know this, but that would be your H1. So one element of SEO is your heading structure. And that is how excuse me. That is how Google reads your website. You can put as much content and text on your website that you want, but if it's not structured, Google's not going to even know what to do with it. So one of the biggest problems is that I come across clients that have a ton of content on their website, ton of copy. They might be using keywords, but if Google can't read the structure of that with headings, it's not even going to know where to put you. So going back to your question of duplicating content, I think that you want to use your primary keyword as your main head website, and then everything around that and under that, including blog posts, should support that. So a great example, we talked about doing the backwards research of looking for the things that you want to be known for. When you're doing that research, look at the kinds of content that come up when you look at that keyword. Is it locations? Is it poses? Is it workshops? Is it like different tools to use? So there's a lot of, you want to create content that supports the keyword rather than just using that keyword over and over and over again.
Okay, that makes no sense. I'm going to follow that up with another question for you because I'm thinking about, because for me, messaging and conversions typically is like my first priority. So like I said, because I'm not always writing for SEO, I tell them like, let's look at your keywords and I will include those, but I'm really writing to convert your ideal person to become a customer. And sometimes when I go to websites that seem to be optimized for SEO, it doesn't feel like a person is talking to me, right? It feels almost computer generated. And so then I'm like, I want to rewrite it so that I'm using the words of my audience and I'm really honing in on the messaging. But then sometimes that may mean I'm not using that keyword because it just sounds like computer generated. Give me your feedback from where you sit.
Yeah.
You're like,
I'm
don't do that, do that. Yeah.
No, and it's so funny. I love working with website designers, and especially ones that are not just doing the website to like wash their hands of it and be done. I love working with website designers that do care about the messaging and the conversion, because all of those things also play into SEO. The UX, so the user interface of a website, is huge. The load time is huge. Those are all things that come from the development side of a website and things that I don't normally touch. So there's 4 key pillars of SEO. It is content, on-site SEO, off-site SEO, and technical SEO. And so the development side of usually what your website developer designer does falls in that technical SEO. So typically, if there's technical things that need done, I usually work with a website designer to do that. But usually, when an SEO client comes to me, is I find it's the opposite problem for me, and that their websites are completely optimized as far as like where their CTAs are, and they're made to look pretty, which is great. But pretty websites also are not found on Google. And a lot of times, and just again, I've actually come across several people that I've worked with that have your websites. And again, I appreciate a website designer that can at least set the stage just for things to be updated for SEO. But a lot of times is people like with the headers, is that people will just put things places and make it look pretty. They'll use several H1s on a page, which is like your like title text, your like header text. And so I'm trying to tie this back in. So the balance between the two, of finding the balance between converting like a converting website with messaging and SEO is, for instance, like if you have an H2 that supports your H1, and it's like and I guess I might lean on you a little bit and ask, like, as an example, what that text might be. Because like, for an example, if you have an H2 that says, contact us for more, or sign up here for our monthly newsletter. Obviously, that's going to still support the overall structure of your website, but there's nothing SEO, like there's no SEO juice to that that's going to lend itself to your website. So I think it's a balance, right? Like, what's going to make the most sense for the person viewing your website, and then what's going to make the most sense for SEO. Now, I'm going to throw a wrench in here. It's also going to depend on your website builder, because I know, for example, show it websites, you can have a header text and actually go in and change the coding of it so that it shows as a paragraph text, which means to Google that header text is not going to show up.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, that's what,
from my standpoint.
That's what I mean.
Because that header for me, I'm always telling people I want it to communicate the promise very clearly. That's those that you have seen that I have done, that's what you would see. Like I said, it's not going to be SEO focused. It's going to be, I want to clearly communicate the promise. So I'll give you a practical example of an H1 and H2 of one that I just launched, and I'll leave off the client's name. Okay, the H1 on the homepage right now, and I will maybe change it after today. I am open to learning always. It says, enjoy a safe and successful partnership with your horse. As I dove into all of her testimonials and the things that people say about working with her, that is what they love from her. And then the H2 right under that is proven resources and education to help you communicate with your horse in and out of the saddle.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah. I knew it would be. So don't hold back. Like I said, I invited you here because I'm like, I know where my quote unquote weaknesses are. Like, so I want people's websites to be optimized to do both. And I know there is a fine line between the computerized version that's just speaking to Google and the one that's speaking to people that land on the website.
And sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. So I want your feedback. Yeah.
So the very first thing that I do want to make really, really clear to people, and you had mentioned that sometimes SEO only like websites that are optimized for SEO only seem like almost computer generated. And that's one thing to be careful of, is that we are living in an age of AI. And AI is not always the best, because AI is pulling from websites that are also online right now. So I always recommend, again, use it as a tool, but always customize it to what you're doing and who you're speaking to. So that's the first thing on that. I wanted to say that before I forgot. But now, kind of moving into your example. So the first thing that comes to my mind when you were reading it was, what are those people looking for? Like, the people visiting her website, what are those people typing into Google to find that website? And that's what should be in your H1 and H2. And not even necessarily like what those people would be looking for. Like, would it be how to better, and this would be a blog post, how to better my relationship with my horse? And again, that was kind of, I'm not a great audio person, so if that wasn't the context of the title, then
No, you're good.
take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, so like my first thought would be, depending on the target audience, is what are those people typing into Google that would help them find that website? Because now we're bringing in that human aspect rather than just going and plugging in these keywords on a software tool. Because I could plug in keywords all day that I say, are going to get you found on Google. But really, at the end of the day, too, it's about who is searching for those keywords. And that's where, SEO is more than just, something that you can update and plug in keywords and be done with. It does take a marketing mindset to implement these things, because you have to know, is this target audience looking for information? Are they looking to make a purchase? Are they looking for, to create trust and to find a brand to potentially follow for information? So you have to think about the user intent of it as well. But yeah, that's where I would kind of start. And then I would start researching different keywords that would lead me to websites of the same nature. And then kind of build a keyword strategy from there. And then I would just do my best it would be a combination of really what you and I do, of how can we create this header to have the same messaging, maybe with a primary keyword in there. Or would we shift everything down and create a header with the primary keyword in it, and then use that, the one that you have now, as the H2, and then the one you have as an H2 as an H3, or even a supporting content paragraph below?
That's so interesting. And even from a design perspective, and I know for some listeners, we're getting a little bit technical, so just bear with me. This will apply. And I know honestly that we also have people listening that do their own website that I've talked to. So I know they're going to be able to apply this, because oftentimes when we see the H1, it is the one with the larger font size.
Yep.
But it doesn't have to be the case in order to have that H1 tag. So you can also get kind of creative with that, is what I'm hearing from you, and say, hey, get a little more creative with how you're using your H1 so that it has that keyword, but it still looks the way you want it to look.
Yep. And I can give you, for those that do it at home, and to maybe make this a little less technical and a little more applicable, so as an example, I run all of my personal websites on Squarespace. Squarespace is the most unforgivable in terms of what you can do to customize your website, but mine are functional. I don't need my websites to really do anything other than be a space to provide credibility for the people that visit. And for the podcast network, it's for people to join the podcast network. I personally, at this point, am not doing anything to where I would need to make an H1 not an H1. My websites are very functional purpose only at this point. But example, Show It, they're known for their beautiful websites, and they're drag and drop. I wouldn't say they're exactly user friendly. I really prefer WordPress, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know what you use, but I'm pretty sure on Elementor I think you can do the same thing as change an H1 to a paragraph using the coding, but don't quote me on that. I'm not 1000% sure. So for example, it really depends too on your platform. So if you're on a platform like Wix, Squarespace, GoDaddy, I don't know, anyone that's plug and play, basically, you're going to have a very strict on what you can do with your headers. So that would be in that case where I would use that. for your H1, I would find a primary keyword and I would incorporate a phrase with that. If you have somebody like yourself doing the website, you have a WordPress or something a little malleable, that's where you can kind of play with using the H1 somewhere else and still having that really nice look with it also being functional.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for diving into that. That's super helpful. And for those listening, I hope that's helpful too, because they often hear me talk about writing. I don't talk a ton about copywriting. I do the copywriting for websites. I don't teach a lot about it because most people are just looking for the really punch and the practical, doable stuff here on the podcast. But the copywriting really matters when it comes to websites. And that's why my packages, like you said, my packages are copywriting and design included, because I care too much about the copy to just, like you said, wash my hands of it and just copy and paste what people put into a Word document. And so I want it to be the very best it can be. So this is super helpful. Okay. I totally overtook your outline. So thank you for bearing with me on that. Now, you started talking about your first point is that it needs to be know what you want to be found for. And then you talked about the pillars. Or do you want to still talk about those pillars, or did you have another thing before that with after the knowing what you want to be found for?
No, well, I think the knowing what we want to be found for, I think I probably pounded that one into the dirt pretty good. I'm giving lots of people lots of tips on why you should do it, how to do it. And again, I think SEO can be like really intimidating for people that don't know, or they think it's really simple. And honestly, to get started is I mentioned a couple tools, and I can give you those to include in the show notes. Just to make it really easy, or you can contact me as well. But also just getting familiar with how keywords work on Google. It's really just if you're going to do it yourself, educating yourself is the very first step in learning how keywords work on Google. I cannot stress that enough, because you can plug keywords in your website all day. But again, there's 7 other steps that you need to do to be found for that keyword rather than just putting them on your website. So I think that would be my last little note on knowing what you want to be found for, is also putting the work into what is it going to take. And personally, regardless of, and I'm very clear with my clients, is I want you to understand the process. I know you're hiring me because I'm the expert. I also want you to understand that this is not going to be a one-time fix. Like you said, I can't guarantee you're going to be on the first page of Google, but I can give you the best shot based on my knowledge and the content that we put up. So
is there a place that you send people to that, if for those that are listening, they're saying, great, I do want to get educated. Where do I go? Is there a go-to that you send people to that you would recommend?
So there's a couple really good resources to get started. And I don't know where you want me to plug this, but I also have a 7-day challenge that gives you the resources.
I want people to know. Yeah.
Okay. So at the link in the show notes, Denise will have in there, is a link to a 7-day SEO challenge where all of these things, even the technical side, I break down step by step. I also give you bonus content such as tutorials, templates, guides to really give you everything you need to get started. And again, it's going to give you those resources if you want to educate yourself further, that you can do that. A couple of great resource sites that you can go to learn is moz.com. It's moz.com. Ahrefs, which is hard. It's ahrefs.com. And then, there's so many other. if you honestly just type in.
Yeah, it's good to know at least a couple places, to send them that you think are trustworthy. There's so many that are trustworthy, but if you're like, these are easy to do these, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, like you said, I think you mentioned, so we talked about the knowing what you want to be known for, and then the 4 pillars. I don't want to get too technical on those because, like I said, I personally don't even focus on the technical side. I really focus, we've talked about content and content structure. On-site SEO is your keywords, your heading structure, kind of all of the things literally that you see on page on your website. And then off-site SEO is backlinks. So linking to other credible sites. That's if you do like a guest blog on another website. It's listings, it's directories, it's really getting essentially a link to your website from another credible one. That is, especially heading into how competitive the space is, the more that you can do that in a way that's beneficial to the reader, the better, because it's going to create credibility for your website. So,
And how, for those listening that are saying, okay, awesome, how do I do that? Like, what are some super practical ways that people are getting those backlinks?
yeah. So I think relationships, like this is going to sound really basic, but for example, with several people in the industry is I have like a preferred partners. So I have a space on my website where I list people that I would 1000% be happy referring people to. And that's a quality backlink to them because I'm a credible website. Again, the directories, for example, podcasts, getting your website listed on your like in your show notes that's now posted to Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, like those are all credible websites that are now linked to your website. That's a great way. If you're a service-based business, what service directories can you list your website in that's going to lead people from website back to yours? Again, guest collaborations. So like you and I are a great example. Like what value can I bring to your website, to your audience that you would say, yeah, Krysta, you can absolutely create a blog or, whatever that looks like. So finding people that complement your work in your space that makes sense to drive traffic from one website to the other. And it's a great opportunity to say, hey, like we can do a swap. Like you can do one on mine and I'll do one on yours. So that's always an option rather than just asking. You can ask and receive as well.
I love that. Those are super good practical ideas. Thank you. And
Yeah.
then you said your fourth pillar was technical. So technical is not the same as on-site. So divide those out for us.
Yeah. Okay. So this is where
you're like, we weren't going to get technical, but I want people to, just a very basic understanding of what that means.
Yeah. So really technical is, so I also have, I think it's called Google Page Insights. And it is, you can plug in your URL, and this is in the challenge as well that I mentioned. You plug your URL in, and it gives you a whole report of how quickly your website responds, the crawlability of your website, which is, again, talking about that structure, is how can a search engine explore your site, how many pages are indexed, and I will give like a very beginner application tool that is easy to understand. Is your site mobile friendly? What technology is implemented? So how many plugins you have, how many little widgets you have, and are they optimized for search? Are they slowing your website down? The hierarchy. So again, a little bit of that structure is important in the technical side. And yeah, I think those are like the very basic parts of it. I had mentioned the tool. So Google Search Console, if anybody of your listeners are not using Google Search Console, I 10 out of 10 recommend it. So Google Search Console is going to tell you the keywords that you're currently ranking for. It's going to tell you what page you're currently ranking for those keywords. And again, sometimes a website can be set up to be searchable for one thing, but when you pull up and plug your site into Google Search Console, you might actually be ranking for something completely different. So it gives you a good idea of where you're at. And that's one of the very first things I do with an SEO client because I want to know where I'm starting.
Yeah.
It also tells you how many pages are indexed. And when I say indexed, it means are those pages listed on Google? I try not to get too technical. A page can be indexed on Google, but not crawled. And that usually means there's not enough content on the page. The structure wasn't good enough for Google to be able to know what that page was about. So again, knowing on every page that you want to be ranked for, it's having enough content, which is usually I recommend like at least 500 words per page. Blog posts especially, and you want it to be structured. So incorporating your headers, having links, internal linking. So a blog post should be linked to one of your other pages in your website. But Google Search Console is a great place to start. It tells you how many clicks you're getting from Google. It's just a really great free resource that goes with Google Analytics, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah, that's so helpful. And I will put that, this show notes are going to have so many good links for everybody. So I'll make sure all of those things are listed on the show notes for the episode too. Oh man, this is so good. Okay. Is there anything else, Krysta, that you're like, I want to make sure that equestrian entrepreneurs are aware of? Okay. I'm going to throw you on them.
Yeah.
Because this is something that I'm guessing you hear a lot, and you already talked about social media. So you left like a dive into social media, and really your focus now is more websites.
Mm-hmm.
So quite often we hear, do I really need a website? And I will, of course, we're preaching to the choir for those listening, like they already know what I feel about it. But I want them to hear it from you in terms of social media versus website. Is a website really necessary when I'm on social media and I'm getting people to buy, I'm getting people to click, and I feel like I should just put my energy and my money and my effort into social media? Why do they need to not bypass websites?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I think it really comes down to like, how serious are you about your business? Because like personally, like a website is the very first thing that I go to check somebody out. Like I want to know the testimonials this person has. I want to know if their bio on their website matches who they are on social media. Like that's the very first thing I personally go to. Also to contact somebody. I feel like with social media these days, you can reach out to somebody and it might go to another inbox. Like they might not ever even get your message. So I want a way to reliably contact somebody. And again, to kind of check out like who they are really as a person. Are they who they say they are online? But again, it's like that professionalism. We're in a day and age where having a website is very easy. It's pretty affordable. And I feel like for anybody that's taking their business and their art, whatever they do, whether they're a photographer, service-based business, if you're like really wanting to get serious about showing up for your clients and being found online, you have to have a website. I mean, we talked about that competition. If it comes down between you and somebody else and they have a website and you don't, and it has more information, it has testimonials, it has, quote information or, anything, chances are I'm going to go with the person that has a website. So I would say don't take that risk. Like if that's what it's going to come down to, don't give somebody that option of going with somebody else just because you don't have a website.
Oh, that's a good word. That's a great perspective. I love that. Okay, Krysta, I'm so grateful. Thank you. I know that I learned so much, and I know my listeners have learned so much as well. So, of course, I'll have all these links on the show notes. But for those that are listening right now and saying, I want to pull her up, I want to find out more about Krysta, tell them where they can go online to connect with you.
Yeah. So, like Denise mentioned, all of these links are in the show notes. And I only preface that because you can find me everywhere under my name, Krysta Paffrath. But spelling my last name might be a struggle, but it's Paffrath. I'm on Instagram. Facebook, I'm not super active. I do have a page there, but I'm not super active. I'm really active on Instagram. LinkedIn is a big one for me. And then my website is just KrystaPaffrath.com.
Beautiful. Yep. I'll have all those things there. Thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was great.
Okay, guys, I know that was a lot. I almost broke it into 2 episodes, but I think for those of you who are still with me, then you're probably very appreciative that it's all together in one place and you can come back and reference it as needed. Let me remind you, there's a reason Krysta is an expert at this because it's what she does. So do not feel the pressure on yourself to become an expert. My goal with this episode is for you to become more educated, have a better understanding so that you know when you are ready to do your website or when you are redoing your website, then you can ask the right questions and you can have a really good plan. If you're really wanting to show up for a certain search result, then you understand a lot more about what's expected. Now, after we were finished, Krysta did say, oh, there's one more thing that I didn't share. And I told her I'll make sure it goes in the outro. All right. One of the things that she said she often hears from people is, hey, I searched for my business and I came up. So that means I have good SEO, right? And she was so, she just wanted to make sure you guys understand this. This is what I would say. There were 2 things that she mentioned. Okay. For one, she said it's false reasoning to think that that's what SEO is because number 1, you searched for your business name. You weren't searching for what we were talking about earlier, these keywords that are not your business name, but that are what your audience, hopefully your potential customers, are searching for, such as horse trainer, Springfield, Missouri, right? Riding lessons, Ohio equine photographer, those types of things. Okay. So you searched your business name. So hopefully you came up when you searched your own business name. Secondly, your internet browser remembers your search history, and that will absolutely factor into the relevance of your search results. So remember, if you're wanting to test a keyword, use what's called an incognito or a private window so that you can really get true search engine results. Okay, so a little bit more tips for you from Krysta that I promised her I would let you know. Now, of course, let me remind you, if you have not listened to episode number 28 on the basics, to make sure you have that good foundation in place, go and do that. And you can also get my free SEO basics checklist at stormlily.com/SEO basics or on the show notes for today's episode. And then I, of course, will be linking to Krysta's website, her free challenge that she shared about, and ways that you can connect with her as well. Guys, I'm so excited because I really know that this is an episode that you're going to want to save and come back to, and that I hope really gets you on a solid footing for some advanced strategies for marketing your horse business. Thanks so much for hanging in there with me as we got really technical, and I hope that you're walking away equipped, educated, and ready to take action. Have an amazing day, friends.